Good morning, and welcome to all of you. I want to thank all of you for joining us this morning. We are very pleased this morning to be able to share with you some exciting results from our economic impact study. First, I want to recognize a few special guests who are with us here today, starting with one of my bosses, Bob Downer, from the Board of Regents in the back there. Bob, we're pleased to have you here. We were expecting, I was thinking Vicki Lensing might be here. If she comes, let's be grateful that she is here. I do want to acknowledge Mary Masher, State Representative Mary Masher, and State Senator Bob Dvorsky, who are both here. Thank you for coming. And also Dave Lesh from Dave Loebsack's office. Dave, thank you. And Mary Day from Senator Grassley's office. And I'm not sure, I think Dan Smith was going to come and represent Senator Harkin's office, but I haven't seen him yet, but he may be here yet. And then finally, Nancy Quellhorst, representing the Iowa City Chamber of Commerce. Nancy, thank you for all of your support as well. Throughout its history, the University of Iowa has had a profound impact on the life and livelihood of citizens all across our state. And that impact includes a significant contribution to the economic prosperity of Iowa, of the state of Iowa. Our primary economic development contribution to the state, the nation, and the world is providing the accessible, high-quality education for those who seek it. That is what we're known for. That's obviously what we'll continue to be known for. But I hope today, as you'll see, we're actually more than that. This year, we're educating nearly 31,000 students enrolled in 11 colleges. We educate nearly 80% of Iowa's dentists and 50% of Iowa's physicians and pharmacists. 80% of Iowa's school districts employ UI-educated teachers and administrators. And we have 81,535 UI alumni living just in the state of Iowa, and all contributing significantly to our economy and to our communities. But our impact on Iowa's economy also extends beyond the education that we provide, and that's the important message today. We're one of the state's largest employers with more than 13,000 faculty and staff. University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics records nearly 1 million clinic visits and patient admissions each year. More than 100,000 patrons attend our performance venues and visit our museums annually. And we've recently learned that Hawkeye athletics fans who visit Johnson County bring with them an estimated $100 million each year. These are stupendous numbers, and ones that make us very proud. We also have many more similar statistics and much more anecdotal information that we could share with you, but I'm going to spare you that this morning because I think the report is more important. We wanted to quantify, why are we doing this? We wanted to quantify our impact on the state's economy and even do this more systematically and comprehensively than we've been able to do previously. So last year, we commissioned Tripp Umbach and Associates, a nationally renowned provider of economic impact analysis for universities and academic health centers, to do the research and provide a complete overview of the UI's annual economic impact. Today, we're pleased to report the results of that study. I know I'm very pleased personally to share these impressive results with you. The study demonstrates that the University of Iowa is one of the leading economic engines in our state, and that we return incredible results to the people of Iowa for their investments in us. We're proud to show that we are excellent stewards of that investment and that we give back to our citizens many times over in order to make life better for all Iowans. So joining me today is Paul Umbach, president of Tripp Umbach, and his colleague Nicole Parker, who directly led this research effort. I'd now like to turn the presentation over to Paul, who will provide you with details on the study's methodology and its findings. And at the conclusion of the presentation, we will be more than happy to take whatever questions you might have. Again, thank you for being with us. Paul, it's all yours.
Thank you, Sally. Welcome to everybody, and thank you for coming today. It's a beautiful day in Iowa, and I have just two goals. One is to share with you the findings from the economic impact study, and the second goal that I have is to be here to answer all the questions that you might have, along with the president, Nicole Parker, and others. I guess my first goal before that is to get the first slide to come up on the screen. There it is. We did that. I want you to know that an economic impact study provides a great opportunity for us to understand about the universities that we serve. And over the last 20 years, we've had a chance to do probably 150 studies in almost every state around the country. And you might think that that would get boring after working with Big Ten schools and other large research universities, but actually it gets more exciting every time because we get to learn about the places that we've been asked to measure. And one thing I want you to know, in all of our experiences, this university has impressed us in many ways, and so one of the goals I have today is to make sure that I don't forget as we go through all the things about the University of Iowa that really caught our attention after measuring hundreds of other places. The economic impact study methodology and goals of the study were really to clarify and better understand the economic and employment aspects of the University of Iowa on the state of Iowa. And I think what was interesting is that there's all kinds of pieces to this university. You're a university that has a large health science component with its own hospital. You're a university that has very strong and very deep programs. And you're also a university that has tentacles in so many other places, not just here in the Iowa City area, but really throughout the state. So we had to really measure quite a lot to pull this together. I think also to quantify and articulate the community benefits of what an academic research institution, and what does that really mean to people across the state. And in doing so, we first had to understand and share with you what economic impact is. And there's three really easy ways to understand it. The first way to understand it is the university spends money, and the university spends that money in the state of Iowa. And when the university, which sometimes gets money from outside the state, like federal research dollars, there's about $400 million plus that come from outside of the state. Then when it spends it in the state, it's helping the economy. The second way that the university has economic impact is when people come from out of town. Now, this is usually in the presentation where I tell people that I'm coming from Pennsylvania this week to be here. And the only reason I'm here from Pennsylvania this week is to share this presentation today, and I'm bringing dollars with me. And Nicole's bringing dollars with her because she came this week from Minnesota. And next week, I'm actually at a board meeting at Penn State University where I've been a board member for 3 weeks. Usually that wouldn't impact anybody in the audience, and you'd be, that's nice. The guy is a board member at Penn State. This week it means something because a lot of other Pennsylvanians are coming this week. And when it was mentioned that $100 million comes just into Johnson County every year because of just football, you start to understand what that second component's all about, and that is fresh dollars coming in. So it's pretty easy. We were hired independently by the university to do an impact study. When you pay us, the money goes to Pennsylvania. It doesn't count in your impact. But when we come and visit, it does count in your impact. The third part of the economic impact is the most fun part, and that is the impact that your spending has on others building and developing things. I came down the path last night, and I said, Nicole, we're not in Iowa anymore. I meant to say we're not in Kansas anymore. This is an incredible facility. This is a multi-million-dollar development. We're sitting right here in the middle of a $200+ million development. The university's part of that development because they're building an ambulatory care center where you see the dirt being moved. But it's not just the university's money. There's a lot of private money. There's a lot of investment that's being made. And I think it's very clear that the third part of economic impact, which is the indirect spending and the respending, because there's a university here, that is really the big part of the story, and that is all the companies and all the investment that's made throughout the state because of the university. So let's get to some numbers. What does this all turn into? Well, the university's budget is roughly in the $2.6 billion range, but that's the same as the direct impact. And the way that works out is that for every dollar you're spending out of state, you're pretty much getting a dollar that's coming back into the state. But that's supporting about $3.4 billion of additional every year dollars in the economy because of the respending and because of the vendors and because of the contractors and because of the folks that you're spending money with increasing their spending. And that together equals your total economic impact of $6 billion. Now, at this stage, when you're looking at these numbers and you see that we're directly spending as a university 2.6 or bringing in 2.6, we're generating another 3.4 every year, and it equals $6 billion. It's hard to put that into context. Well, $6 billion is 1 out of every $30 in the Iowa economy. Typically, when we work with a large research university like Ohio State or Penn State or University of Michigan, it's about 1 in every $50 in the state's economy. So your concentration of impact at the University of Iowa is about 50% higher than what we typically see. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is that you are much more important to the state's economy, but also that you have a lot of other things that I'm going to mention that you do for the state's economy than just have dollars that are generating. You're also a major employer. As one of the top employers of the state, we look at states and we look at data. And what was interesting to me is that you have the largest payroll in the state. And you might say that's interesting, but it's very interesting because it's payroll that really drives your economic impact, not number of bodies. So if you have this payroll that's being spent and respent by your employees, you can really see that your 20,000 direct FTEs actually generates jobs for another 31,000 folks. And I'm really glad we're doing the presentation here, although you've got a wonderful and lovely campus. It would have been great to be on campus. I was happy that we were here because some of the employees that work at this hotel and at the nice sushi place just down the way, and some of the employees that work in construction that are out there moving all that earth are part of this 30,000 jobs that you support that aren't on your payroll at the University of Iowa, but are actually on collective other folks' payrolls in every kind of industry segment that you can imagine. So the 1 out of 30 jobs are not just here, but they're throughout the state's economy. In every county in Iowa and in every community in Iowa, there are jobs and there are dollars that are associated with this university. And there's also, as was mentioned, graduates, be they pharmacists, physicians, school teachers, nurses, scientists, in every county in Iowa. So what does this return on investment look like? Well, for every dollar that the state invests, the state of Iowa invests $379 million every year in this institution. And that's the investment of the state, which is about, let's just call it $400 million, out of a $2.6 or $2.7 billion budget. And for every dollar that's invested, there's about $15.81 that comes back to the economy. In all the studies we've done, the average is about $10. So there's a premium that the spending that Iowa is having on its university. And the reason for that premium is because of the research dollars and because of all of the visitation. Patient visitors that come for health care, visitors that come for sports and football games, scientists that come to visit, international students. The amount of international students and the amount of out-of-state students is at the higher tier of state universities in the United States. And every time I throw out one of those numbers, be it $400 million in research from the outside, a high number of international students from the outside, out-of-state students from the outside, consultants and vendors like us from the outside, we're actually bringing in a lot of dollars that make the $400 million in state investment go a lot further. If you took all of that away, you'd have a situation where you would have really the state money kind of staying in Iowa and the generation of fresh dollars being a lot smaller. So that's a really important, I think, part of your story. This is just a data slide that shows that for every dollar you get in tax dollars from the state, for every dollar in state funding, you give back about $1.28 in tax revenue to state and local governments. Now, if the state appropriations were reduced, the university's tax contributions would then decline. You have a situation that you're really getting 28 cents back on every dollar that the state has given to the university because of all the taxes that are generated. Hotel room taxes that we're going to be paying because we stayed here, and on, airport landing fees and payroll taxes on the employees, sales taxes on your visitors and on the vendors that come, and it just all adds up to a lot of tax revenue that also comes back because of the university. One of your major focuses is, I think I clicked twice, is research. Here's a real special thing you have going here. In just 5 years, you've grown in annual research from the outside of $100 million. So really steep research growth. And what was interesting when we looked at the $400+ million in direct impact from research, in that your medical component is about half of that, about $200 million to $220 million that comes in. But what I was really surprised with is that in all the studies I've ever done, I've never seen a liberal arts and science college have $70+ million annually in research. And my wife's a poet, and Nicole last night took pictures of me in the writer's library here at the hotel, and we emailed those back. And I'm not sure there's a lot of research in poetry. But I can tell you one thing, there's a lot of research going on at this university that's in areas that are different than your standard health science driven university, even though the health science university is a big part of it. Engineering is strong. You have a lot of pieces to your research story. And in that respect, it's sort of like a stock portfolio that's very balanced. You have a lot of opportunity for growing your research because you have it strong in so many areas. And you're 20th among public universities in federal research and development. If we get all the technology right, I can get through this. Here we go. You're also a strong community partner. The University of Iowa provides about $300 million a year in other community benefits. I'm going to go back to your health science school. When we're doing studies around the country, and when we look at the University of Iowa healthcare, it is highly, highly regarded and ranked, and one of the strongest public universities in the country in healthcare. And I don't know if you even know this, but you're the model for other states when they look at how you deliver healthcare. You own a hospital, you own a large healthcare system. But that system's providing $232.5 million in free care to Iowans every year. Your university donates about $31 million to charitable organizations. That's just from your faculty and staff. And you have about $37 million in volunteer time by students, faculty, and staff. So what you're really looking at is an additional $300 million in benefits that go beyond what your economic impact is. There's a lot of things that we haven't included. For example, not included in this study is the economic impact of that huge army of Hawkeye alumni throughout the state. What we don't have included in this are the business spin-offs and commercialization of research that you do. What we don't include in here are some of the image and what we call intangibles. One of the reasons why people come to Iowa is because of the great university. And my wife texted me yesterday, because I travel every day, and she said, "Why are you in Iowa?" And I was able to say, well, Iowa's got the great university with a writing program that you're aware of. And so those are things you can't even quantify. But the key takeaways are really impressive. $6 billion in economic impact every year. That's annual. That's not over a bunch of years. That's every year. 1 in 30 jobs are generated and supported in the economy. $15 back for every dollar the state invests. More state revenue going back to state and local governments than the money that's given. And then the research, and the research enterprise actually is almost $1 billion part of the $6 billion and supporting about 63,000 jobs. And that's the one I'm kind of highlighting because that's the one where you've seen so much dramatic growth over the years. I'm very interested in helping you with questions and answers, but I'm also going to sit down so that Nicole and Sally can also help. And I think that we're going to have this facilitated once I push this button. There you go.
Questions for the benefit of our presenters and everyone else in the room. If you have a question, if you could raise your hand, I will bring you a microphone. We're also recording this, so for our broadcast folks, we want to make sure that we get all your questions heard. So we'll open it up to your questions.
Did the declining state funding play any role in the university's decision to commission the study, and will you use it with legislators to talk about why you want more funding?
Certainly. Thank you, Diane. That's a very good question, and it's certainly we did start thinking about this before the severe budget cuts that all of us experienced recently, but as that proceeded, it became even more apparent why we needed to do a study like this and why I needed to have confidence that from external sources that what we were doing would in fact demonstrate, I hope, the real value and more closely the total value of what the University of Iowa can bring to the state of Iowa and does bring to the state of Iowa. So absolutely, and we hope to be able to use this obviously with many different constituent groups, and legislators are certainly one of those constituent groups that we hope we can share this with broadly. We're pleased that some of them are with us today.
President Mason, could you talk a little bit about how, maybe what this says to taxpayers in Iowa? Just non.
Thank you, Brian. I hope this demonstrates clearly to the taxpayers in Iowa that we're a darn good value. I don't know too many people that have any kind of a retirement portfolio or make any kind of investments out there that are getting a nearly $16 for every $1 they invest return right now. I'd love to be invested in that for my retirement portfolio, just for starters. And I do, when I go out and I do a lot of Rotaries all across the state of Iowa, I talk to a lot of alumni groups across the state of Iowa, and this is exactly the kind of message I want our alumni and friends of the university, people who care about the university, people who frankly don't think every day about the university. I'd like to be able to illustrate to them that this is important, whether you're in Council Bluffs, whether you're in Sioux City, whether you're in Mason City, Charles City, wherever it is in Iowa, that we're still an important entity for the entire state of Iowa, and we're trying to bring value and a better life for all Iowans, whether it's emanating immediately from Iowa City or whether it's through many of the programs and other activities that we have across the state.
When and how was it chosen that Trip Umbach would be the group to create this report?
We did a request for proposals basically over a year ago now, and there were 3 firms, I believe, that have the kind of expertise that Trip Umbach does, and in the end they were the firms selected as the one that could provide us with the best information for the best value.
Good morning. President
Good
Mason,
morning, Mary.
President Mason, just a question, and maybe it's a 2-part question. This was done for the University of Iowa.
Yes.
Can we assume that Iowa State and UNI have that similar kind of impact? And is there any studies that have been done, and are the regions intending to do any studies to show that impact statewide for all three of the public institutions?
Yeah, we certainly, I wanted this information for the University of Iowa and was willing to pay from gift funds to have this study done. I don't know the answer to the second part of your question, which is whether there's a similar study for Iowa State. I don't believe that Trip Umbach has done a similar study for Iowa State or UNI. I certainly think it would be interesting information for all of you as legislators, for the regents, obviously, to know whether we can sort of multiply that impact even more by including the three Regents universities in a similar study. I think it would certainly be useful information. Yeah.
So is the ultimate goal to increase the U of I's state appropriations?
Well, I'd love to obviously regain some of what we've lost through state appropriations. We are a public university. I believe profoundly in the power of public education, and particularly public higher education. And I certainly hope the taxpayers of the state will understand and realize what a good value we bring to taxpayers in the state and what good things we can do for certainly the young people in this state that we educate. 85,000 of them obviously have graduated from this institution and have gone on to do good things. So it's yes, I'd certainly hope that we can begin, as the economy begins to recover, that we can begin to reestablish with the legislature relationships that would allow our state appropriations to grow again. Right. That would be an ideal situation.
I just want to jump in and say that when you look at economic impact and how it multiplies, state universities have a core support, and that core support puts them in a position to attract the external research, to have national and internationally known programs, to bring companies, to bring energy from the outside. There is a counterfactual here that I think is very important. When we do our analysis, if you would take that investment, that core investment, and dilute it, it has a direct effect on diluting the power of the university to do all these other things that are right now creating the return on investment. And I think that one of the things that's important is for taxpayers to realize that that investment actually brings more money back to them in their businesses, in their communities, and in terms of even tax revenue that pays for it. That's a hard thing when you don't live in the community that has the state university. And in every state we work in, one of the challenges is to say, if you dilute that base, so much of the other things can crumble in terms of the economic investment. And so I think that's really what we need to get, what I'd advise you to communicate, because those are the things that can make sense to people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hi, President Mason. Alex Hoyer with Iowa Public Radio. Now knowing all these numbers, great numbers, but what do you see as areas for improvement on possibly how the University of Iowa could contribute even more to the state?
Certainly. We hope, obviously, that these numbers can grow. And as Paul pointed out, they're significant. They're significant already for the state of Iowa and different than many other states with similar institutions of higher education. We have a greater impact, frankly, on Iowa than Ohio State has on Ohio, which is a fascinating finding to me, not to denigrate Ohio State by any means. We haven't played them yet,
That's
so I have to be careful.
That's in a couple weeks,
I hope. Yeah, we'll see how that works out. But nevertheless, the numbers are impressive to me because they now give me a point of comparison. And I would also tell you that Paul and Nicole did this study without taking into consideration some of the budget cuts that we experienced last year. So we're actually working with numbers on the state appropriations side that were before the 10% across the board cut last year. So our state appropriations is smaller than what Tripp Umbach was looking at when they did this particular study. So, even in the face of difficult economy, and we certainly had a difficult economy all across the nation and around the world for the last several years, this is still a pretty potent set of numbers that we can build upon. I'd love to be able to come back in a few years, do this again, and see what we've been able to grow in terms of the overall impact that we're having with regard to the economy. And I'd also love to be able to do a piece on economic development because, as Paul mentioned, this is not even taking into consideration small businesses and other things that grow from the University of Iowa. That is perhaps another story to be told on another day. With some additional information. So we have more pieces that we'd like to add into this. I'm also asking for a breakdown county by county across the state. So when I go out into other counties, I'll be able to at some point tell people exactly at the Rotary Club in Marshalltown what impact the University of Iowa is having directly on their local economy with regard to dollars and cents being spent there.
One of the things, too, that's in the study that could be expanded is the fact that people come in a greater percentage from out of state and out of the country to your university than other universities. They stay in the state often, and they bring with them the knowledge that you've helped them learn, but they've also bring with them the economy that they came from. For example, people that come here and live here have visitors that come and visit them. And it's one of the ways that Iowa gets introduced to the rest of the world. And what other business does that and brings in this many people and then keeps a lot of them here and then creates relationships all over the country and all over the world? Higher education is the best investment a state can make because higher education has people attached to that investment and dollars that come along with those people. And I think that's another point that needs to be kept in mind.
If I might also add, I don't believe there is another state in the Union with a population base the size of Iowa's, 3 million people, that has 2 AAU research universities, Iowa State and the University of Iowa. That's an extraordinary resource for a state the size, and I mean that by population base now, of Iowa. That's just not the case. If you look at other states with multiple AAU universities, Indiana being one with Purdue University and Indiana University, the population base there is significantly larger. Michigan being another one. Again, population base significantly larger. Very few states have 2 AAU universities. Many don't have any. Yeah. But Iowa has 2, and it's truly remarkable.
The President Mason mentioned that the UI contributes more to the state of Iowa than Ohio State does to Ohio. What other universities that you've worked with, how do they compare to the University of Iowa?
Well, that's a very good question. When we look at our category, we've done 150 to 200 studies, so I put them all into categories. If we look into the major research public university category, there's nobody that has the better proportion. And here's why. If you go to Penn State, the Pennsylvania economy is about $900 million a year, almost $1 billion. If you go to any of the Texas schools, if you go to Michigan, if you go to Northwestern, if any of the ones that we've studied that are there, they're all in states that have really, really large economies. And that doesn't take away from the fact that Ohio State and Penn State have really large impacts. University of Washington, Nicole just did a study. University of Washington has a bigger impact than the University of Iowa. But in the Washington economy, it's about 1 in every $50. It's interesting how it always comes out to about 1 in every $50. It's about 2% of the economy typically. And you're more than that. So, in fact, I couldn't, when we went through our database, think about a state research university that had a bigger impact on their state. And you might say, well, what about the University of Vermont? There's only 650,000 people in Vermont, but the University of Vermont is significantly smaller. Way, way smaller. They sound like a big place, but they're significantly smaller.
Why weren't some of the spin-off companies factored into the overall study?
Yeah. We do have a separate section in the report that gives an estimate of the spin-off companies. What I was, and I'm sorry if I miscommunicated because it's a very good question, in the $6 billion number, none of the spin-off companies are included. That $6 billion is just you operating as a collection of entities. We didn't add in the $1.7 billion a year that we estimate are related to university spin-off companies. So my apologies for not making that clear. It's about $1.7 billion in addition is in the spin-offs. What I want to be real clear on, though, is that we didn't want to start adding in all those other things into the big number because we want you to kind of also have, for your own purposes, a solid figure on just what your operations mean to the state. It's a good question.
I'd like to thank President Mason and her team for this contribution. It makes our job at the Chamber of Commerce considerably easier. Also wondering if there is any pre-existing data that exists, or will this be the baseline upon which progress will be measured?
Well, from my particular viewpoint, this, for me, will be the baseline. And part of that is, obviously, as a relative newcomer, I wanted to know where I was starting from as we continue to work forward. There are, I know there's information that we could collect previously and sort of backtrack and do similar studies to know what we were like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but I'm all about looking forward, so I think we're going to start from here.
President Mason, you mentioned that the study was paid for with private dollars. How much did it cost?
$66,000, I believe.
President Mason, so are you saying that there hasn't been a similar study done before? And second part, you mentioned possibly coming back to this again in a couple years. Do you plan to make this a regular, regular practice, and how frequently?
I'm not going to make any promises, but obviously I would be interested in tracking our progress going forward. What I was implying was we certainly, to my knowledge, have not had Trip Umbach come in here before and do any study like this. So from henceforward, if we wanted to track this and do it again, I might go back to Trip Umbach in a few years and say, could you come back and take another look and update our figures for us and see what kinds of progress we've made and what kinds of changes have occurred since the last time you were here.
We have time for one more question.
Paul, you had mentioned there's a lot of unique things about this community. We live here and we know that. But what, from an outsider, what did you see and what did you and Nicole observe that maybe we aren't aware of and were ahas for you?
Well, that's a very good question. I actually went to college a long time ago, more than 30 years ago, in Nebraska, and went to Concordia. And one thing about Concordia and all those kind of schools is that they're called bubble schools. Nothing comes in and nothing goes out, and it's a great type of education to have, but there's no connection to the rest of the world. And I think the thing that really impressed us the most was that this is Iowa's connection to the world. And if you don't support that, and what I mean by that, it's not just that you have a high percentage of international students and faculty and research, but it's a connection to the world culturally and spiritually even, that this is a place where the world can get to know all about Iowa and kind of land here. And that's very different than my experience as a young person going to college in a liberal arts college in Nebraska, where there was no connection. There was not a connection to Lincoln. We weren't connected to Grand Island. So here you have that, and that's a hard, and we see that everywhere. The influence of you to the world and the world's influence to you is a very, very good thing, because I think in some states we all have image things. And I love it that at your airport you can buy a corn-related T-shirt. And Nicole bought me one last time. I have it. I wear it when I walk the dog. But you know, Pittsburgh's no more a smoky old steel town than Iowa is, lost in the 19th century. You know, it's nice. There's a nice sculpture out there of a guy pulling a wagon with his family. But that's not Iowa today. And the agribusiness here that you support and you have a lot to do with, and the science part, I know there's another school that does that too. That's not 100 years ago. That's the future. So I think that what we learned was that this is a place that's very connected now, and it's to the benefit of the whole state that there's a place where those connections are made.
And I also think, coming from Minneapolis, I didn't know what to expect the first time that I came here. You know, it's a state away, but it seemed a lot further. But I think broadcasting what your city's all about and the impact of the University of Iowa, it's a great campus. Wonderful things happen there. It's a place that I would want to go. And I think trying to communicate that, just the dynamism of your campus, and it's just not, it's not easy to quantify in our report, but promoting those messages. I told everyone in Minneapolis it's a good vacation spot. You should go down and check it out.
Good. Well,
Okay, thank you all for attending today. If there are members of the media who want to have a couple follow-up questions one-on-one, I think our participants may have time to accommodate that. Thank you.
Thanks so much.